So then we're just going to be working in Flutter during this learning activity, um, which is just a typical currency converter. Basically, we're just going to try to get some text fields and some buttons. So when you type in something in a text field and hit a button, you update something else. Get us into just some basic widgets, basic UI stuff, and how we manage what we call state and this sort of interaction, which brings in a little complexity into Flutter. So, um, so this is our app. We're gonna build. So let's start with a new Flutter app. So hopefully we've got Flutter in working on your computers. Online students, if you're having trouble getting Flutter up and working, let me know here. So I'm actually going to let's see from now since I have the Flutter plugin, I can go Flutter our file new and do Flutter project here for that. I'm going to make sure Flutter is selected down here. Right, and I'm going to hit next. And again, my Flutter SDK it should always remember where that is. So that should be linked in here. Give it some name. So again, names here have to be all lowercase. They can have underlines in them. So I'm just going to call it Flutter currency converter, something like that. You don't have to change the organization, but I'd just like to. I like to leave the language in Kotlin. Again, this is the underlying language. You will never generally see this language or write everything in Flutter, but just that when it generates code for Android, what is it going to generate it? And it'll generate it in Kotlin here. And again, we don't need all these things. I like to be able to run this on the web here. Windows is sometimes helpful for some people, but I don't. I usually just run it on web or on Android. So I click off of all the other ones here and then hit create. So what it'll do is it'll create for each of those options we chose, it'll create a folder and a separate project in that environment in our world. So like I selected Android and web. So there's an Android folder here and a web folder here, and it'll create those. So it should set this up. And again, our main file is in lib main.dart. It'll bring that up. There's also a README file, and we can close that here. I'll just note, especially if you're having trouble doing some of the setup stuff, I don't know if you remember, when we were in Android, we used Gradle, and there were some build.gradle files to set up versions and stuff like that. I actually worked quite a bit with those, and hopefully you didn't have to work quite so much with those. But in Flutter, it's this pubspec.yaml file. This will be our configuration for building and library. So we'll see that later on there, but that'll be our, and again, sometimes if something's going wrong or something got you may have to modify that. But if you have a nice clean install, it should all be fine. Okay, let's run. So here's our main.dart file. I'm going to switch this because I don't have even Windows available. I'm just going to run this in Chrome here and hit run. And it creates a kind of a template we saw last class here where we can it has a button, a floating button we can click to increase a counter. And so we'll just kind of start with that in this class too. So again, here it runs in our web browser. We've got our title, some text here, a variable. And then this floating button, I can increment and add one to the variable. So one thing to pay attention to is this. This is what we call, an interactive page. I can click here and it redraws the page and updates this stuff. And this will be called a stateful page. So let's look at the code and see what is required there. Well, import, here's my main, and I'm running my app. Again, so a bunch of this is going to be boilerplate kind of going forward here. Here's my app. It's a stateless widget here. And this is my root of my application. It has a build function, and it sets up stuff. I'm going to delete some of this comments here so that it's a little easier to see what's here. So here's my stateless widget, so no state. It's creating a material app that's just kind of the layout or the theme, and then we're creating a theme here with a certain color. You can see the color. I think if I change that to something else, and then reload this, it'll change the theme of the page for this. And then we then call our next widget, my homepage, and we pass in the title string to that. So here's my homepage. So the first one was called my app. This is called my homepage. It's a stateful widget. So where this was a stateless widget, this is a stateful widget. And again, almost always our widgets, because we'll want some interaction and we'll have to redraw our widget from time to time. There, it'll be a stateful widget. Here. I'm going to again delete some of these comments so we can see here. We call this constructor again, and we're taking the title and saving that down here. And again, there's this state management that we have to do. And so state is kind of a weird thing. It's kind of like a persistent state between when we're running our app, and it tells our app when to redraw things for this. We see this like if you're in full stack and I think you're using React there. I think React often has a state. And again, you can set up state stuff to redraw the page. So a similar thing here. We can have our state. So we declare a state variable here, and we create that state variable, and our home page is the type of it. And then we call this my home state. So we need to have another class down below the page state. So this is where we define our actual code. So actually everything, all of this is basically boilerplate here. The main with my app, the stateless widget here, the home page with the stateful widget, and setting and calling my state. And then here we declare here's your state here. And all of our code will always go in the state. So basically, like I say, almost all this will be boilerplate every time. Every app we create will have all that stuff in it. And then we will start working below that here. So what is below? Once we get, so we'll be working in this class. We give it some name, and it's a state class of type my home page, which is this class up here. So what can we do? We can have variables here. This is a counter variable. Flutter tends to use the coding standard that local variables start with an underline. I don't know if you've seen that very much. It is some companies use that fairly regularly. I know other companies start all local variables with a lowercase m, and some people just have a name for them. But that's just a coding standard here is counter. So we're declaring a variable. We're declaring a function to increment that variable there. We'll talk a little bit about what the set state does in just a sec. Here, I'm gonna get rid again some of these comments here, so we can see. The comments actually do a good job of explaining what all, like column, this is a layout widget, takes a list of children, arranges them vertically by default. So yeah, so there's some nice code in there about the column widget. But again, we declare our variables, any methods we need, we declare, and then we declare a build method that returns a widget and takes the context here. And so this is where we set up all of our widgets. The build method has to return a widget. So we have to say return and then a single widget here. And often we do a scaffold for this. And again, that's this whole layout. It has room for like a menu, a title bar, a main screen, all that sort of stuff. So we set up our schedule, and inside that, a couple things that can have is a app bar and a body. So those are the two things we are setting up, is the app bar and the body, and we're putting widgets in there for that. I'll try. I was noticing I didn't. I thought I had LinkedIn here. There's good documentation, of course, on each of these widgets. So like if you're interested in the scaffold widget, you can just go here into the Flutter, documentation and look up the scaffold widget. And so implements the basic material design, visual layout structure, provides an API, displays this, has some state, and again, has some, it'll show you code for a scaffold and a sample output of the scaffold running for that. It'll often walk you through different types of code and outputs in this. So that's pretty good documentation how you can change it, the look of things with these scaffolds. What are the different things? So like say, you might also then want to look up app bar, because that's a common used in here for the horizontal bar. You might want to look up floating action button or drawer or bottom sheet or snack bar, so it lists in some of these standard methods that you can use. So I find that somewhat useful to look at the documentation. A lot of these have almost too many options that sometimes the documentation is actually more confusing to me than just trying them out and looking at them in here. So, okay. So let's try this. So why don't you go through, create this, and see. We want to be inside our scaffold widget. The first thing we want to do is change the title. So you might see that the title is passed in here as a string. Find out where it's passed in from and change that. Inside the scaffold widget will be a column widget. So I didn't quite that. So we got scaffold, a center, and then a column inside that. And then inside column is this children here. And these are our two widgets. So this is where we're going to want to put our code in here. We want to put our code inside the column here, because again, our layout is just a column with text, text field, a button, maybe some space, more text, field. So yeah, and you can start putting in these widgets in here for this. So why don't you get started on that and see how that goes. Okay, so we're going to want to change the name. Excuse me. Okay, let's see how you're doing here. I added links to these classes in here so you can look at those, saves you searching for them. I'm going to start by just doing the text widgets first. One says dollars, one says euros here. So in my thing, here's my column, here's my stuff, and I put some space here just so it's easier for you to see. I just have two text widgets. The one before was constant, and you could keep it there. The idea is that that just means it doesn't change. But again, if you don't necessarily have to label it constant if you don't want, so you can just say text dollar here. If I hit hot reload, right now it's just displaying dollars and euros over here. What if I want to increase that? So again, you can kind of look at the text widget here and stuff, and so they'll show you some. Here they have a container, and inside that they have a text widget here. But where do they do here? They add styles. So here they added styles for this. So one of the options besides the text is the style for this there. And there are lots of style options for this. So we can try some of those styles. So if I wanted to make this bold, I can try to add that on here. So if I go back into my code here, I can add in the text style here and hit reload, it'll be bold. What if I want it to be bigger? So I actually find that, AI works well. I don't like, I'm going to use Gemini chat over here, not agent. I don't want it to change my code. I just wanted to tell me about it. So again, I'm asking, what did I ask it? In Flutter, what ways are there to change the font size of text here? And again, using the style property of the text widget. Yes, that's what I want to do for this. So they're showing me how I can just, under text style, I can just set the font size here. So I can just try that for this. And again, also under themes, there are different styles and stuff that you can set up. You can set theme.headline medium as the style of this. So I can do it either way. So I can go back in my code and I can do I need to do a style. Now, every once in a while, you'll run into problems. You run this quite often where with all the braces and brackets of different shapes and sizes here. So again, it won't run. I'm getting this error. I see this little line here, and they again expected to find a parenthesis, so I can look here and start matching up my parentheses for this. So here, this matches with that. This starts, ends, so it looks like I need another one here. And then my error goes away. So again, you get used to running into issues with your parentheses. And again, we also have the square bracket because we're in an array here. So we can add in a text field, so that's where we can enter some information here. You can look at the examples of a text field, and We will have to tie those into variables in a sec, but initially we can just try to create a text field variable here. So again, maybe here I'm going to want to just do a text field. For this. And another text field after this. So again, now I have my fields, and then my text fields are where I can enter in some values here for this. And similarly, buttons, there's not a generic or general button class. We generally use elevated buttons as the most basic button here for this. So I can add those in. And again, this is in an array, so I want each widget has to have a comma after it. Now, elevated buttons might have some required parameters. So again, the name parameter on press is required for this. So it has two required parameters. So I'm just going to say implement those so I can see what those are for this. So elevated buttons again. So if we look at how this works, we want some text displayed in our buttons. And again, so with a button, you would say elevated button. You have to specify an on press event there, and then you have to have a child. And again, if you want to have an icon or a picture there, you'd have that. But we're just going to have text there. So for us, where the child is, we're just going to do a text there and put in some text here. Like say convert to euros or text. Convert to dollars. So now I have my basic layout. I have my dollars and euros text. I have my text fields where I can enter in some text. I have some buttons I can click. Nothing that we don't have any actions there, not storing anything, but I have the basic UI set up. So let's see how you're doing with that UI set. And I'll just pause a sec here and see how we're doing. How are we doing on instructions? So we've added these text fields here. Now the text fields mention this controller dollar text fields and euro text fields. So let's talk a little bit about what that is for this. What generally with text fields, we need to have a variable, a special kind of variable to hold that information that's stored in that text field and update it as it does for that. So we generally will specify variables for that. And that's what's down here. We're going to add these text field controllers outside the build state. So I'm going to grab these two text fields. So I need it inside my whole page state, my state here, like up here where my counter is. I'm going to add them up here. So these are special variables for handling my text code. They don't have like they're not storing the text necessarily, but they're what kind of is used so that when we enter the text, it'll work with this controller. So we just need these controllers. We also need these variables in just a second. It's already suggesting that, but I'm going to not do that quite yet. So now down here, I want to specify in my text field to use that value. So I will say, I think I have to say text field. Oh, I think maybe it's just controller. Yeah, it's just controller. Oops, and actually had it all in there. So I have to specify a controller and then specify the controller I want to associate with that. And so this other text field, I want to say what controller I want to use there, and then I'm going to use my other text field controller here. Do you know what an Oxford comma is? And do you get into long arguments about the Oxford comma and whether or not you should be using an Oxford comma when you write there? My wife loves to have lots of commas, and so every time she edits any of and she edits a lot of my writing, as you can tell, I'm not a need an editor a lot of times. And so we get this whole argument about when to put the comma before the and that sort of stuff. Well, the same thing if you're in with Flutter people and stuff like this, it's this and I don't even know what this is called, but where you don't need a comma at the end of a list like this, but it is standard and the editor likes to put it in here so that when you add another line, it will automatically be there. So for example, here, elevated button, there's a comma at the end here. That's not needed. I can get rid of that comma. But if I have that there, I can just click here and type in my next widget, and it works out fine. Where if I didn't have that and I typed in a new widget, it would have problems because there has to be a comma between each widget. So it's sometimes confusing for people when they first see these, like, why is there a comma here? And why is there a comma here? Again, because this, here, this one is certainly optional. But again, since I'm specifying and I might be adding more things to it, and especially when this goes over multiple lines. So like if I'm seeing something like this, that comma is very common there. So I'll just note that. So, okay, so I specified my controllers here. Now we're going to need some variables there. So we're going to need some variables for our conversion here. And again, we're just going to stick those in the same spots up here where we had this. In fact, it was suggesting those. If you just accepted those suggestions, that would be fine also for this. So I'm going to have something to keep track of my dollars, my euros, and then the conversion rate. They're all going to be doubles for that, right? Now I'm going to need some code to run my conversions here. So each one has an on press button. I want to do some code to convert these back and forth. So I'm going to add. So right now we have an increment method here. Let's add another, another method for like convert. Yeah, like how it suggests these things already. Convert dollars to euros. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. So, let's see how it did. Okay, so I'm going to have a method convert dollars to euros here. We're going to get the dollar amount from this text field and parse it here and store that into my dollars amount. we're going to take my dollars, multiply it by my conversion rate, and store it in euros here. So it put that code in automatically. I thought that was pretty good. Okay, so that looks good. This looks good. And then finally, I'm going to want to update my euro text field here. So I'm going to update my other controller. Yeah, that's right. But I'm going to do some formatting in that actually, rather than what it suggests. I'm going to do string format and do 2 decimal places there. So there's my convert dollars to euros. I'm going to do another void underscore convert euros to dollars. And it just filled in that code for me pretty well also. Interesting. So I want to make sure what my conversion rate is and when I'm multiplying and when I'm dividing there. So let me just check that. So $1 to how many euros? So $1 is 0.86 euros here. So if I, yeah. Yeah, and €1 is $0.15. So I'm going to switch that around. I'm going to make my conversion rate 0.15, but it is swapped. So now a dollar, if I'm going to get to euros, I have to divide by that conversion rate. And here I want to multiply. So AI guessed, but didn't guess right on how I'm using the conversion rate there. So I don't know what I said here. Yeah, euros, dollars times the conversion rate. And again, this is old, so I think your current values are different. So okay, and then I just want to note we were talking about the underline, and again, we don't have private and public, but if we do start with a variable with an underline, it is private by default. And so that's why we're going to use those in here for this. Now we want to call these methods inside our onClick. So inside our button here. So and again, we can look at right now, we have a floating action bar. Let me see, let me pop up that. So that's this little plus down here for that that incremented our values. And so we can see kind of how that works. This is my floating action button. On press, I called that method. It just lists the method name there. Tooltip child is there. So again, same here, elevated button on press. I'm going to just, now right now it lists this because that's me. This is basically a little Lambda function. I could put in I could actually have copied my code from here and I could have just taken this code and put it all in here and done it that way. But again, I like to have my own little name methods here. So I'm gonna grab that method, convert dollars to euros, and I'm just gonna put it in here in place of this Lambda function. And again, convert euros to dollars, put that in here in place of this on-pressed one. I'm going to actually get rid of this floating action button here. See if I can do that without ruining things. Okay, so now I should be able to enter some number here, hit convert to euro, and voila, it does nothing. All that work for nothing. So rewarding to see nothing happen. So why does that do nothing? So you can look at your code. So I have my elevated button here. When I press, I call convert to euros. It goes up here, convert to euros. I parse the data out of here. I convert this. I do figure out how many euros, and then I update the text fields in this. There's these controllers, Tom said, that they, whatever you put in there should update the fields wise in that. So let's look at increment really quick. So I deleted this, but we have this increment method up here, there, and it has the increment, but the increment is inside the set state here. And so what is set state? Again, anytime we're updating the interface and we want it to redraw the screen with the updated information, that's when we have to call set state. So anytime we're updating anything, we want to use a set state here. So we want to put a set state around here. So we can take here and we could copy this code, put that here, copy this code and put it here. And maybe indent this a little bit for set state. Now that's really common. I think if I just highlight it, right click and say show context action, one of them is surround with set state. So again, if I just select my code, right click, show context, or alt enter, one of them, there are all these things you can add here. I'm going to choose a surround with set state, and it will do that, basically do that same thing that I just did, just faster for this. And then, now this is where I actually get scared, where I think it should work now, and I'm not sure if it will. So let's see if it actually, so I'm going to do my hot reload. I've got my value in here, convert, still nothing. I'm going to rerun this because of the set state stuff and see. Yeah. So there are times where hot reload doesn't work. When you're just changing the layout and stuff, it works. Hot reload will work, it seems like. But my experience is that there are times where, especially when you're changing the underlying code or the underlying state information where it doesn't know where to redraw stuff, that you have to then actually rerun this, not just do a hot reload for this. So if I rerun this, I can enter some value here, convert it, and it'll update the value up here.
Is it hot reload on save? Because it was working for me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet if I save, so you did a Control S here and saved it. I bet that would work too. Yeah, maybe that was part of my problem for that. Okay, so okay, I'm going to get rid of our increment. We don't need that anymore. But just a general layout, oh, and I don't need this counter variable anymore. Okay, so I have two text controllers. Every time we have a text controller, we need to have a variable that we use for that. We have our local variables. They're underscore because they're private here. We have our methods for our buttons here. It is worried that I misspelled this one, but we'll just keep that way there. And inside those methods, we use set state because we're updating the screen, and that means that when this code is run, it will redraw the screen. Here we have our build method, we have our scaffold, we have center of column. Inside our column, we have an array of widgets, and we have our widgets here. Our text fields, we specify a controller, for those. And then our elevated button, we specify on press what method we want to run with those. Not too bad, hopefully. Does that make sense? So, again, you can do a lot more to clean this up and, reformat, this is just the very bare bones stuff. So if you want to clean this up a little bit, try to add more styling themes, you're free to do that. AI can help you out with some of that stuff. Or like I say, the documentation provides some of this stuff. I should also, like I say, there's a, so like if I should link, at some point I'll link these. Well, next week we'll have a list of all these common widgets. So widget of the week text field. I like the little videos actually that. Oh, but I like the Flutter, the actual official Flutter one. Flutter Map is another channel that does a lot of Flutter content, but that's not the official widget of the day there. So here, widget of the week. That's what so. I think I just like the little music that goes along with it. Oh, this is text. Okay, so I'll try to link in more of those videos if you want to see more of that for this. Okay, I have my solution back from 2022 in here, but I think it will work pretty well here. So if and again, some of this is probably going to change here, but what I often do is just like take everything from my home page stuff and on. If I were to take that and put it in here, so right here is this class, and paste it in here. I haven't updated this. The one thing that has changed is the theme sizes. So again, I'm styling these the dollars, and I used a theme here. And I used to be able to specify the headline size, but now if you just hit that and we type in headline, there's just headline, large, medium, and there. So that is the one issue with this old version, is the themes have been updated there. But other than that, this code should run fine also if you get stuck somewhere. So, and then your assignment this week is to do the tip calculator. This is one way of displaying it. Feel free to modify this layout if you want to play around with Flutter some more different things. But the idea is that display some text, display bill amount, have a text field here. So this is text field. This is a switch widget, calculate tip button, and then display the tip amount down here for that. So see how that works. Now, as far as submitting these, what did I tell you to submit? You can just submit the main.dart file here for these. Or you can, again, commit and push this. So again, here I've got this, and I could find it, but under version control here, I could share the project on GitHub for now. By default, it will be marked private. That means I can't see it. So the easiest way now is if you there, it's logged me in, is to uncheck that so it's not private, and then hit share. And then again, it'll push it up to GitHub for you. This is my, assignment done. Okay. And again, it's just pushing all those files up the GitHub there, and you can do that too. So feel free to, if you want to push it to GitHub, you can. It's pretty easy to do. Otherwise, just attach this main.dart file. Eventually, we're going to have to use GitHub more because we'll break our file up into subfile, lots of files. But for now, it's running in one file. Okay. I'm going to let you work on that. In the past, we've had a lot more trouble getting Flutter working, and it seems like we've got Flutter working and people doing assignments. I'm very happy we're that far along. So online students or people who aren't in class, let me know. We have run into problems getting Flutter up and running before on different machines. So let me know if you're having trouble for this. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and let you work on the assignments stuff.